Today, we're diving into a real legal head-scratcher. It's about a landmark Supreme Court ruling connected to the 2020 Delhi riots. And the puzzle is this: how did some of the people accused get bail, while others who were facing the exact same serious charges didn't? Let's get into it. So, here's the core of it. You have a group of individuals, right? All of them are charged under India's really strict anti-terror law, the UAPA, for their supposed roles in the same conspiracy. But then, the court turns around and gives bail to 5 of them, while denying it to 2 others, Umar Khalid and Sharji Lamam. I mean, what explains that split decision? That's exactly what we're here to figure out. And this isn't just about bail, not by a long shot. This ruling is a big deal because it introduces totally new ways of thinking about conspiracy. It actually reinterprets what a terrorist act can even be, and it tries to clarify that tricky balance between national security and, our individual liberties. It's a decision with some really far-reaching consequences. To solve this puzzle, the court did something pretty interesting. They came up with a new framework. So instead of treating everyone in an alleged conspiracy as equally responsible, they created something called a hierarchy of culpability. Let's break down what on earth that actually means. Okay, so the court essentially sorted the accused into 2 different buckets. In one bucket, you have the principal planners. These are the alleged masterminds, the ideological drivers who are supposedly conceptualizing and directing the whole thing. And in the other bucket, you have the peripheral actors, the local level facilitators, the people on the ground executing specific tasks. Think of it like a bank heist. You've got the architect who draws up all the blueprints, and then you have the person driving the getaway car. The court's argument is that their levels of responsibility are just fundamentally different. All right, that was the first big piece of the puzzle. The second major piece of this ruling, it has to do with the very definition of a terrorist act. The court really took a close look at the law and expanded how it's interpreted in a way that could have a huge impact on cases down the line. Now, the really crucial point is buried in the law itself. Section 15 of the UAPA defines a terrorist act using obvious examples, bombs and firearms. But then it includes this super broad phrase, any other means. And believe me, the entire debate really hangs on how you interpret those 3 little words. So here you can see the 3 competing views. The prosecution came in arguing that a massive, coordinated road blockade, something designed to completely paralyze a city, could absolutely be a terrorist act under that any other means clause. The defense, of course, countered that road blockades are a form of protest and that the law must be talking about violent weapons. But the Supreme Court, they kind of carved a path right down the middle, saying that the intent behind the act is what really matters most. And this quote from the ruling, it just sums it all up perfectly. The court is basically saying you don't need a bomb or a gun. If an act is systematically designed and coordinated to disrupt civic life on a massive scale, and the intent is to strike terror, then yeah, it can qualify as a terrorist act. The weapon isn't the point. The coordinated effect is. So how did these 2 big ideas, the hierarchy of roles and this expanded definition of terrorism, how did they come together to lead to the final bail decisions? Well, the court was really caught between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, the UAPAS has an incredibly high bar for granting bail. It's designed to be tough. But on the other hand, these folks had been in jail since 2020 without a trial even starting, and that raises some serious questions about their constitutional right to liberty and a speedy trial. So how do you balance national security with fundamental rights? They followed a pretty clear 3-step logic. First, they assessed each person's role using their new hierarchy. Were they a planner or were they a facilitator? Second, they weighed the evidence to see if there was a prima facie case. Basically, is there enough evidence on its face to even go to trial? And third, they did a balancing act. Was the alleged crime so serious that it justified keeping this person locked up for years, or had the wait for a trial become a punishment in itself? And there it is. That's the answer to our puzzle. For the alleged principal planners, the court decided that the seriousness of their supposed role as masterminds outweighed the long delay, so no bail for them. But for the peripheral actors, the court ruled that keeping them in jail any longer, especially given their limited facilitative roles, was just disproportionate. It had crossed the line from being preventative to being punitive. And so they were granted. Okay, so we've solved the puzzle for this specific case. But why should the rest of us pay attention to this ruling? Because, well, it sets some major new precedents for Indian law. Let's boil it down to 4 key takeaways. First, this ruling establishes a hierarchy of culpability that could totally be used in future conspiracy cases. Second, it broadens the definition of terrorism to include acts that aren't violent but are highly disruptive.
Third, it shows the court is pretty reluctant to override these strict anti-terror laws. And finally, and this is a big one, it raises serious questions about the line between legitimate protest and criminal activity, which could have a chilling effect on dissent. Which leaves us with this final, really crucial question. By shifting the focus away from the weapon and onto the intent and the effect, this ruling has fundamentally reshaped the legal landscape. The challenge now, for all of us, citizens and the courts alike, is going to be navigating a world where the line between a democratic protest and a terrorist act has just become significantly more blurred.